Hey there, teachers, Trailblazers. I'm now the CSL Trailblazer. Another episode 62. I'm really pumped about this one. Let's make something happen. So this week I was talking about building relations with my in-company students, and it got me thinking again about the relationship that teachers have with their students. Too often we focus on the exercises, on the lesson, and the topic or the target language, and maybe not enough on the relationship and how it can create that atmosphere in class where students feel comfortable and want to contribute and leave the classroom feeling like they learned something without having feel overwhelmed by language points, vocabulary, and grammar rules, okay? So I don't know if teacher trainers are covering this because I did mine so long ago, but for me personally, it's an essential part that, just like in the workplace, has a lot of relevance in the classroom. So how can we maintain or strengthen the relationship between teacher and student? How can we encourage or establish that positive energy that students get when they're in a class where they feel comfortable giving their opinions and contributing in class? And also, what can we do as teachers to encourage our students to contribute, be concise, which is one of my favorite things about reaching that fluency level that a lot of students want to achieve? Well, that's a lot of questions, and they're going to be answered in today's episode, so stay tuned. Right after this message, we're going to dive deep. Boom. So let's get right into it. So let's start by talking about 2 points that I made a post about a few weeks ago. There's a link in this video about it where I talked about what things teachers can do to improve their teaching. There were 2 points out of the 5 that I mentioned, and 2 of them were changing the topic of discussion and make them curious by being curious. And I want to elaborate a little bit on those points, and I think they're relevant to the topic for today. So how do we avoid strained relations, nice vocabulary word, and create friendly or amicable relations between our students? Nice vocabulary there about relations. How can we do it? So it starts by being curious, by asking our students for their opinions, their ideas, and their points of view. This is us showing curiosity. It doesn't have to be just about the lesson questions, but about any topic that might come up during our lesson. By showing this curiosity, we are encouraging our students to contribute, and we're showing them that we care about them and that we want to know who they are and what they think as individuals. Okay, so that is really vital, and I've learned from experience that students appreciate, and at first might be a little bit surprised, but in the end appreciate the teacher showing an interest in them, like a real interest, being curious about who they are and not just treating them as a number or as just a name on a register list. Okay? Now, that can also be reciprocated by them asking questions about the teacher and getting to know the teacher. So be curious, teachers. That's the first tip for today's lesson. Be curious. Now, as far as changing the topic of discussion, that is my next point. And the reason that one is so important is because, again, you can establish a relationship or build up a relationship with your students by allowing your lesson to go off on tangents and coming up with topics that might be current events or related to your topic lesson without feeling like you have to follow a rigid lesson plan that you have created or a syllabus. It is perfectly fine. Let the lesson flow, because students want it to feel like it's natural and not that it's so mechanical and rigid and all pre-prepared like they're robots. Try not to treat it like it's so robotic, but let it flow and let it be natural. Create that natural environment in your class. So that's point number 2. Let's move on. My point number 3 is about brainstorming, okay? It was connected to my lesson with my in-company students this week. Now, brainstorming. When in the workplace employees are hired, they do some training sometimes, in-company training about points or tips for brainstorming. And when I was doing these with my students, I felt like, you know what? A lot of this relates to teaching. So what are some of these points that maybe teachers can adapt into their lessons that might have really impressive results or You might notice students rapidly improving because of it. So let's get right into it. How can we do it? Well, avoid criticizing or judging others, okay? So in a brainstorming session, obviously this is a good tip, but encourage your students not to do this, okay? Don't criticize or judge their classmates' opinions. And of course, as teachers, we should do the same when we want to encourage our students to give their opinion. Let them give it without feeling like they're going to be judged about it. So that's very important. The next tip is very straightforward. Don't interrupt. You don't interrupt when your students are speaking because they're going to notice it and they're not going to appreciate it or like it. But encourage your students to follow this same mantra, the same motto of not interrupting and letting someone finish. It's connected with good communication skills regardless of what language you're speaking or learning, okay? Not interrupting. Okay, the next thing is, and this is something that I've learned recently that I've started to adapt and I've stuck to and I feel like it does get results, is announce a time limit when speaking to encourage students to be concise. So, as you know, if you've watched my previous videos, being concise for me is a fluency goal, okay? Highly ambitious students don't know it, but that's really what they want. They want to be able to say things without having to use a lot of words. And if you can show your fluency this way, that's going to be a huge asset when you're in company working with others, that you don't have to use a lot of words to say what you want. So give your students time limits and be consistent with those time limits. Always tell them what they are and always say stop when the time's up, because then you're saying, listen, you only got 3 minutes, you only have 2 minutes, you only have 4 minutes to get through these questions or to talk about this topic. Force them to understand that they need to be able to express themselves in a set amount of time, so that means they have to use maybe some more sophisticated grammar or vocabulary in order to get to the point of what they want to say, instead of just like chatting and rambling on and just using the words that they know. Push that. Really push that. They'll see that there's a reason for it. And that leads me perfectly into the next point, okay, which is explain the purpose of the exercise or lesson. This is vital, teachers, okay? To explain to students what is the point of doing this exercise, okay? If they are thinking, without you telling them, that the point of the exercise is just to do it to practice the grammar point or to practice the vocabulary, they might feel like it's a waste of time because they do so many of those damn exercises, okay? And they get bored and they get sick of it. So tell them, is this worthwhile doing? Why? When are they going to use this vocabulary? When are they going to use this grammar point? When is it going to be vital or beneficial to know this language? In what situation? In what scenario? You are the English teacher, so you should be able to give them these examples that might give them a reason to do the exercise with some meaningfulness, because they'll know that this is the reason to do it, okay? Very, very important. Finally, don't spend time on details. Somebody else said in a TED Talk that I watched about conversation and how to have a good conversation is stay out of the weeds. So staying out of the weeds when you're having a conversation with anybody simply means don't focus so much on the details of your vacation or your trip. Your listener cares about you and wants to know about you. So they don't care about the details. They just care about how you felt and what you thought about your vacation and your trip to this exotic place or new place that you went to. It's the same for teaching, okay? So you don't have to focus so much on the details. Focus on the most essential aspects of the language and why it's useful to know or to use and how it can benefit the students. So those last 2 points are connected. Now, those are my tips. I hope you found them valuable. I wanted to incorporate language connected with building relations. So just to sum up, I used amicable, I used strained, I used maintain and strengthen. I also used establish and build up relations. This is all very useful vocabulary. So I hope you found it valuable. Have a great week. Maybe you can incorporate some of these tips into your lessons into the future, because remember, the relationship matters. That's all I got. Build that momentum, bow, make something happen, burn to learn, be proud teachers, have a great week, and I will see you next week for another episode. You know, Freshen Up Fridays, they're always coming up. When? Fridays, that's right. Thanks again for subscribing and following. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. I'm Nandis, signing out. Take care. Of course, any questions? Love to get your comments. Later.